Hi, this is kind of a continuation from the last video, and I think the point I wanted to make from the drug analogy is that you need the negative first to get the high off of the drug. So there can't be just some happiness pill where you're constantly happy, because that's the very nature of the life is the drug, where you need the deprivation to get the satisfaction out of the deprivation or the negative that you're running away from. Or that's really the point. You're running away from negatives, or you're satisfying deprivations, which is pretty much just running away from negatives. You're trying to escape the negative. And that goes back to the point, the very foundation of the mechanism that we're existing in is a mechanism where you can't do anything except experience negatives to get to the positive. That goes to the point to, like, you need the negative of the drug beforehand. First of all, there's no point to having the drug addiction. There's no point in having some kind of addiction. But the other point is, to the drug addiction, is once you have it, you're depriving yourself of the drug so that you can get more satisfaction out of it, and you need more and more of the drug to get sort of satisfied. And that goes back to the point where you need more and more. If you're not feeling anything, you need more and more to get that feeling again. Sort of like the feeling, like you need more and more negative. If you keep on coping with life, you need more and more negative, and the more the negative you feel is worse and worse, making life not worth living. The more you have to build up this kind of coping and defense mechanism, but it's the very thing that makes life worth living. So the more you cope yourself up, the more likely you're going to end it anyway. Or say enough's enough, I'm not going to deal with this problem anymore. Before I go back to that, I think I might come back to that in a minute, but I want to go to this idea of continually moving forward, how that's what we're doing constantly, is we're moving forward, and how moving forward is counterproductive to the reality. If we wanted the reality to exist in the present state that it is, obviously problems are a part of life, and we can't just say once we reach a peak that problems are no longer going to become a problem. And the problem, obviously, we recognize that the lack of problems, the lack of things driving us will become the problem in and of itself. And that's a problem you can't defeat. There's a problem where if you have no other problems, a problem becomes not having problems, and that's a problem you can't defeat. Once you solve, say, bullying in schools, or you solve hunger, you don't have to eat anymore. Well, what's the point? First of all, you have nothing to drive you, no deprivation to drive you, and that's the very thing that, I know this sounds redundant, I keep saying this in a lot of every time, but it's the very thing that gives life any meaning. The running away from negatives, the chase either being chased by a negative or the chase of moving towards something based on the deprivation that you experience. So you're either running away, being chased by something negative that you're trying to get away from, be it or whatever it may be, or the chase of you chasing something else. There's constantly negatives chasing you, and you're right here chasing the deprivation. So there's negatives chasing you, and you're chasing your deprivations. You're sandwiched. You're in between to the sandwich, and you're the person being sandwiched by the deprivation and the running away. So that's what we're doing, is running away from problems and being chased by problems. So it's a chase game where we're playing Ring Around the Rosie. Not Ring Around the Rosie. We're playing, I guess, Duck Duck Goose, where no one ever catches each other, or whatever analogy you want to use to some kind of chase game. We're trying to chase each other, and you can't hide. And that's another way of describing it. You can't hide. It's about running, and that's all you can do is run. The momentum, the thing that keeps you moving, and so on. So that's the thing. We're moving forward to the point where obviously life can become a problem, and you can't avoid the problem in life, and that's obviously the problem that comes up. There's never not a problem, but sometimes that can confuse you, where you think there's not a problem when there still are problems existing. Well, what would happen when I have no problem? Well, you're always going to have a problem. You're always going to have a problem no matter what happens. That's the very nature of the existence that we're living in. That's the very nature of life, is problems. Life is a problem is life. That's the very nature. And you need something to chase. And say you did take care of all these things like bullying and this and that and the other thing. You take care of all these problems. You fixed your broken leg. You fixed this. You fixed that. You have all these problems. So these are the very problems that cause you to have some kind of initiative, some kind of fight, some push. The chase, it gives you the momentum, the chase to move forward. And like I said before, it's about the end, reaching an end. And the end doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what happened to the end. It doesn't matter what happened in between. It just matters that there was an end. In and of itself, the end is completely pointless without something else. But the end only matters. It says nothing else matters but the end based on the beginning. And it doesn't matter what happens in between. And that's almost the ethereal nature of having nothing once you recognizing. But it doesn't matter because it's the way things are, regardless of your recognition of it or not. Most people recognize it on a more simplistic level. They know that when they don't have something, they're sad. They get upset when, say, they don't get their meal that they wanted. They get upset, they're disappointed, and they understand that, but they don't really perceptually understand that the game that they're playing, that they're being played by a game. They're still enthralled in the game. And that's something that people are still being duped by. And the understanding of the greater game can almost cause more distress in recognizing the full picture and understanding all this stuff and how it pushes around in your head and all that, and so on and so forth. So I think, yeah, and the thing is constantly chasing without the thing chasing us or something else. If there's nothing chasing us, why run? And if there's nothing to chase, then why even move? Why you just stay there? There's nothing chasing. You can run around in a circle, but it's sort of like a dog chasing his tail, or you spinning around for no good reason. It's not going to do anything other than spin around for no good reason. And if anything, you might get a headache. You might get dizzy and cause more deprivation. You want to create a deprivation just so you... It's like the absurd idea of just creating a deprivation so that you can be satisfied. Make yourself dizzy so that you can get undizzy so you can get dizzy again. And that's the whole point of it. That's all you're doing. And back to the idea again before the battery runs out on the video is the idea of why need to have the negative first to gain a positive out of it? Why have that kind of thing driving you? Why have the negative if the positive, you don't need the greater negative to get a greater positive when it's the satisfaction in the end that matters. You can't have a serum where everything just satisfies you, because the very nature of reality is the drug addiction, the cannibalism, where we're reproducing we're consuming to live long enough, even if it's not in our perception, we're consuming long enough to reproduce so that other things can consume based on our reproduction, and we're cannibalizing in a closed environment based on all this, getting the drama, making the life momentum move forward based on these other controlling mechanisms, living off other things such as eating meat and things like that. And so the addiction is, all these things move together, the addiction to consume and reproduce, the built-in mechanism based on these crude forces controlling us to move forward and to reproduce, and cause the whole mechanism just to drive itself, being at the complete whim of the mechanism, just sitting there grinding your teeth, being frustrated. Just imagine that and apply it to that, being frustrated, no way out. You're in the middle of maybe an anxiety attack or something, you're just sort of stuck. You're stuck, and you're living through it, but what's the point? Sort of back to the idea of suffering. What's the point in suffering if it's not going to lead to when's enough's enough, and you just keep on going and going and suffering and suffering. When do you say enough's enough? You have to take it in your own hands at that point. You have to hope for something to happen, something to change the circumstances, and you're stuck in a circumstance where you were thrust into something and you can't do anything to get out. You're stuck and you're being strapped to a table and there's nothing you can do. And that's the game that we're playing. We're strapped to a table and we're stuck between a rock and a hard place based on all these circumstances and the crude forces of reality being thrust in based on a crude forces, causing all this frustration and boiling up into things in your mind and so on and so forth. So you're stuck in a hard place. And it's not that people experience this on a different level. Just because I'm thinking about it this way doesn't mean other people don't experience it on a more simplistic level. They just sort of let it go easier, but it's still the same thing regardless if you understand it or not. So people can understand this, and they can't just apply it to me going on and on about this, thinking about it too hard, because it applies to everyone's and their situation just to a different extent. It's something they can apply to a situation that they're in, the frustrations and things like that. So regardless, it happens to everyone. So the drug analogy of life is basically that that's the very nature of you can't just have a happiness pill, because that's the very nature. You need the deprivation to make the drug so satisfying, and to make it so satisfying, and you get off the high, then you go through withdrawals, and you need it more and more, and you need to build it up more and more to get more and more satisfied before it no longer has an effect. So you need the drug to satisfy the addiction, and you need the drug to satisfy something, to create some kind of deprivation so you can satisfy it in the end. So I think that's all I need to say, and so thank you, and until next time, bye.